Hello Pop-Tarts, thank you for joining me for this video. I have started this video about 10 times now, and every time I start talking I am stiff and weird and awkward, so I think I just need to shake it out. I need to relax, I need to drop my shoulders. I don't know why I feel so differently talking about this than I normally would when I come onto the channel and I start filming. I don't feel that sense of tension or that sense of being very official and very rigid and very formal. But for some reason with this, I'm like, okay, and this is my book, and I really don't want to be that way. So let me just relax and ease up a little bit. Maybe it's also my very grand pom-pom headdress that's making me feel like, oh, everything needs to be right. Let me take some coffee. Okay. So the other day I was sitting at home minding my own business, probably working on something to do with the business or reading a book, and the doorbell went and I saw a guy at the door with a package, and I thought, I haven't ordered anything. In fact, I've been making a really concerted effort not to order myself anything, so what could that possibly be? And I opened it up in my living room, and it was actually the physical copy of my book, Rebel Witch, Carve the Craft That's Yours Alone. And I was absolutely wowed. It felt very strange. It felt very good. As you can imagine, it was a positive experience, but it was very surreal at the same time. If you want to know a little bit more about the origins of the book, how I ended up getting the contract to write the book, and a little bit about how I feel about it coming to the point of publication, I will leave a video down below where I do the kind of Rebel Witch announcement, and you can go over there and kind of absorb my excitement, basically, my fizziness, my bubbles, my good vibes, my good, strong, high vibes, because that video is absolutely full of them. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about various parts of the writing process, and I want to also read a couple of excerpts from the book as well. So hopefully it will give you a feel for what the book is all about and what it sounds like, what it reads like. Very shortly, at the time of filming this video, I am going to be beginning the audiobook recording process. I was told that I could have somebody else read the audiobook for me, and that was kind of standard for the industry. However, we decided that it probably would be a better idea for me to read the audiobook, since I think a lot of people that are going to be reading this book are probably going to be reading it in my accent. So it would be kind of strange to have people listening to the audiobook and not having my voice. Because of COVID and the situation with the ongoing lockdown here in the UK, I'm not going to be able to go to a recording studio in London as would normally be the way. So the recording equipment is coming here. Fortunately, my assistant is a former sound engineer and has a relevant degree and understands a lot about sound, so he'll be with me every step of the way, and there'll be a sort of a producer kind of person on the phone as well for me. So I'm going to be reading through my book, recording it for an audiobook in my living room. Don't worry, all of the appropriate recording equipment is being couriered to me. But this is the times we live in. This is the situation with COVID being what it is, and the ongoing sort of events, the non-events, I should say. I will be recording the audiobook in my living room. So it's kind of different to what I thought it was going to be. And, to be honest with you, there have also been some moments of sadness for me, knowing that I'm not going to be able to have a book launch event either in person, which was something that we were really excited about. We wanted to make it Beltane themed. We were sort of imagining a very floral situation, and I was just very excited. If things were what they were supposed to be, I would already be kind of letting everybody know about it and asking people to come and bring their books and get signatures and talk to me. And I just wanted it to be a really cute little sort of like, I don't know, daytime soiree maybe. But unfortunately that also is not going to be happening. As usual, I will be sat in my home doing everything online. I should imagine I'm going to be doing like a live on Instagram and a live on Facebook and probably a live on YouTube as well. And we'll go with it. We'll run with it. I mean, it's a very small thing to be upset about in the massive scheme of everything that's happened. So I just have to kind of keep focusing on that and be very grateful for the opportunities that I have to engage with my audience and to be excited about something that I've created that I imagined as being a part of my life journey for a really long time. I have visualized holding my own book in my hands for, I don't know, about 15 years, maybe longer. Yeah, probably longer. But I think that it's fair to say that some of the visualizations that I had of being able to hold the finished book, the finished writing project that I had done in my own hands, weren't all coming from my heart space, but I think a lot of them were over time. I think some of them also came from a sense of insecurity that I was supposed to be writing and that other people expected me to write. And so some of it came from ego and insecurity and just feeling like I was supposed to fulfill my destiny, that it was almost like somebody else had picked out for me, you know? But I definitely had some really genuine, really original moments in the last 10 to 15 years of feeling that I would write something, probably something of this nature, and it would be a wild ride to write it, and I would hold it in my hands when it was finished and it would be exciting. And I have to say that I am not in any way disappointed. I feel exhilarated when I look at this book, exhilarated. And to be honest with you, my plans for the day went out of the window once I actually unboxed this, because you can tell I run a YouTube channel. Once I opened this up, I sat on the couch and I was so absorbed into it, remembering what I'd written and how I'd written it and the suggestions that I'd given and everything. I lost 2.5 to 3 hours just staring at this book and thinking about everything that had gone into it. And yeah, it was wild. I remember messaging my assistant at a certain point and being like, I'm really sorry, but I've lost the morning. I just can't stop looking at this. And he was like, oh, well, you know, I can't blame you. Carry on, I guess. Check in with me in the afternoon, would you? So yeah, I'm very, very happy. I'm delighted. I couldn't be happier. And I think that this video is just going to be a little add-on to the original video that I did that was the announcement. So yeah, let me get into some thoughts. I haven't written any notes for this video. I'm just going to flow and see where it goes. So the book Rebel Witch is basically a permission slip. It is my love letter to witches who know that they are witches and they love the craft, but they want to really embrace the craft in a way that is befitting to them, that is reflective of their personality, that respects where they've been on the timeline of their lives, you know? So it's really for any witch that feels like they are already free of the cookie cutter and they want to affirm that for themselves. And it's also for any witch who feels like things have gotten a little bit cookie cutter or a little bit samey, or they don't feel like they've given themselves complete permission yet to just go off course, go off road, do what they want, and feel that they have a practice that really reflects them. It is definitely the book that I have envisioned myself writing for quite a few years now. And that's a real blessing, you know, to be able to write about subject matter that you really envision yourself having a lot to say on and really wanting to put something out into the world that reflects that message that you have. I couldn't be more grateful for that opportunity. However, and it's a big however, guys, the writing process did not take place at the time that I would have liked it to take place. There were a lot more stable times in my life where this book could have come to be. Unfortunately, the writing process did not take place during any of those more stable times. It was not an easy write. I'm hoping it will be an easy and beautiful and fun read, but it was not an easy write for a few reasons. I have memories of an incredible amount of joy when the concept of writing this book came into my life and I started talking to Fiona Robertson at Watkins about the book and about what we wanted to bring into the world and what I really envisioned and what parts of my philosophy on witchcraft I really wanted to put into print. That was very exciting. Writing the pitch for the book was very exciting because even though I was approached by Watkins Publishing to write the book, I still had to produce a pitch for the book. So I remember sitting there in a coffee shop in the middle of 2019, writing this pitch. I can't remember what month it was now. Late spring, early summer, I think, something like that, maybe late spring. I was in a coffee shop, I was writing the pitch out, and I felt like I was absolutely in heaven. I felt like I had manifested this, everything, or so many of the things I've been doing with my message, my channel, etc. had led me to this point of being able to write a pitch for this book that I had been slowly cooking up in my soul for a long time. And I still feel that way now. I look back on that moment and it was a real beautiful moment of joy, not only because I was writing a pitch for the book I'd been fantasizing about writing for quite a few years, but also because I was in a coffee shop and it was pre-COVID. So for that reason alone, it's a joyful memory for me. It was a beautiful, carefree time before you had to wear masks, before loads of people had fucking died and lost their businesses. So even just for that reason, it was it's a beautiful, hazy, nostalgic memory that I entirely see through rose-tinted glasses, and I'm not sorry. So I'm sitting in this coffee shop writing this pitch and just feeling absolutely on top of the world. That is, aside from those brief moments in writing, in the actual act of writing, where I got lost in the flow of writing, that pitch that I was writing in spring 2019 is the memory for me of the most joy, I think, that I received during the whole process. Because a lot of the actual writing process for me was tough. It was tough, darlings, I'm not going to lie. It was a process that took place during a very destabilizing and emotionally turbulent time in my life on many levels. So there were layers to the turbulence until it began to feel a little bit like an Icelandic saga. And at one point, I'm not going to lie to you, about 2/3 of the way through the book, I really began to seriously question whether or not I could even finish it. I believed I would finish it eventually, but with everything going on in the world and also with me, with my personal story, I thought I might need to shelve it. I thought I'd need to put it on pause and just go to my publisher and say, look, this is just not a good time in my situation to be focusing on writing. I can't do it, you know? And I'm really glad that it didn't have to come to that point. But to be honest with you, I don't think I'd have been ashamed of myself if it had have come to that point, because I think sometimes in life you just reach this really absurd moment where everything is just very, very intense and not in a good way. And you really do have to ask yourself, you know, whereabouts you fall in terms of mental well-being, and whether or not you can carry on with all of the commitments that you have been saying yes to and that you have on your plate. So yeah, it was sticky. It was like wading through treacle writing this, I think, on and off. During the summer of 2019, the relationship that I was in, which was to all intents and purposes a complete roller coaster, really different to pretty much any relationship I had previously experienced. I guess you could say that about every relationship, but I think there is certainly some common features that people have in their romantic connections by the time they get to my ripe old age. And the relationship that I was in 2019 was not really characterized by a lot of those common factors, let's say that. And at the sort of midpoint of 2019 onwards, things started to become more and more unpredictable, confusing, unstable. I don't want to give anybody the impression that I was dealing with abuse or anything like that, but I was definitely dealing with feelings and situations that were not pleasant, not fucking pleasant at all. And so moving into the writing process, rather than feeling like that was a very sort of a time of momentum, a time of excitement, a time of joy, I felt hesitant. I felt like I was bracing myself physically and emotionally for a very hard impact. I know that there are loads of people watching this video who know exactly what I mean by that. You know, you just feel yourself bracing. You feel your soul bracing. It's very difficult to produce things creatively when you feel like that inside. It's very difficult to know that you are waiting on something that is going to be incredibly painful and that there is no way that you can escape that asteroid that is coming towards you, and at the same time begin the process of writing the book that you have been visualizing and fantasizing about writing about for ages. You kind of feel that you want to get to a point where you are stable and you can just breathe and you can just do the damn thing. And bear in mind, of course, I work full time with clients as well as a card slinger and a spiritual counselor and a business mentor and all of those things. So I was also sort of looking to fit the writing of the book in around these things and trying to get the scheduling right so that I could do these things, and also dealing with a tumultuous, very sort of up and down relationship. So, you know, it didn't feel like the most fertile ground for roots to take hold and for things to grow. I will tell you that. And when I look back over my life, particularly over my 30s so far, my sort of late 20s and then my 30s, there have been so many more stable times where this book could have begun to be written and could have come into fruition. You know, the times of stability that I've had where there was the more fertile ground, as I said, for the beginning of this book, the inception of this creation, the more stable times were numerous. They were legion. It's not like I'm constantly on an emotional roller coaster and having a really sort of unpleasant up and down experience. There have been many times where the stability, you could see it for miles, all right? It was flat land. It was the Netherlands as far as the eye could see. And unfortunately, I did not begin to write Rebel Witch at that time. I began to write Rebel Witch when things were very lumpy bumpy, which in a way you could say is kind of poetically just for what the book is about. But yeah, it definitely did a number on me in the beginning. One thing that was really interesting for me and that I now consider to be a huge blessing is that I really had to grapple with my insecurities about writing a book that would be in print and that would be widely available. I have written a couple of novels in my lifetime, neither of which I've ever put out for publication. I have written an ebook, which is available on my website, but I have never done anything like this. I have never done such a public project like this that I knew was going to be in print, and that I was sort of connected to every single part of the process. But there is a team behind a process like this, right? It's not just something that you produce and you put out yourself on your website like I have with my ebook. This is a whole other kettle of fish. So I've never experienced something like this, and I always knew I would come up against some degree of resistance. Insecurities about my writing skills, imposter syndrome, those kinds of things. I knew they would come into the mix. I also knew that I've done a lot of work over the years to tackle those issues, to go through them in my mind and in my heart, and also to put out resources to help other people to deal with those issues. I knew that I had a lot of insight into how those issues could be tackled adequately so that you can go ahead and create something, birth something that you're really proud of and that you feel really connected to. However, even though I did use a lot of those tools that I had in my kit, without any doubt, it was still hard, guys. It was still a tough process, I would definitely have the little voice of self-sabotage and the little voice of imposter syndrome and the little who am I voice, So yeah, that was definitely something that I journeyed with throughout the writing of the book. And I really look forward to talking about that more, actually, about imposter syndrome and about different things that I have recognized as a result of the process of writing Rebel Witch that have been really, really helpful for me along the way. And I would like to impart to others. The worries that I was having about my ability, my writing ability, and the worry that I was having about whether or not I was the right person to actually produce this book, which seems silly in hindsight, those worries were very, very real at the time. And I think they were engorged and impacted severely by the very end of 2019 to beginning of 2020, when my relationship went through a very turbulent breakup. We very sort of intensely and dramatically got back together, and then a fortnight later broke up again. There was a bunch of shit that happened afterwards that was really just not good for my mental health and emotional well-being. And then I decided to go to Amsterdam. And I know lots of you were with me during the time that I was living in Amsterdam. And when I went to Amsterdam, it was hard for me to adjust at first into writing immediately, because I had the plan in my head that I was going to do a lot of writing in Amsterdam. But certainly I needed a little bit of settling in period. And while I was there, that is when COVID-19 came into our lives, or coronavirus as it was then known. And that's when I realised I was going to be staying in Amsterdam for a while. And obviously when you're grappling with something that's happening on this massive, international collective level that's affecting so many lives, affecting so much health, affecting so much money, affecting so much mental stability, especially when you are also a spiritual counsellor and that is your work that you do every day, the adjustment period is going to be elongated. And so, yeah, I think at that point, I didn't realise in my own mind that I did have the option to put the book on pause, to put the writing of the book on pause. And I don't think anybody would have blamed me for that. But in hindsight, I'm really glad that I carried on with the writing of it. Even though the writing process was very much slowed from that point, it was very difficult for Fiona to get things out of me, to get excerpts from the book, to keep that flow process going of handing things to the editor. It was like pulling teeth, and I did miss every single one of my agreed deadlines. I want to put that out there right now. But I kind of laugh about that in hindsight because, hello, I mean, the book is called Rebel Witch. The person writing this book wanted to write a book called Rebel Witch. So, I mean, really, what did you expect? You can't expect anything else, I suppose. However, I do intend on writing other books in the future, I think, and that is not going to be the situation with those books, directly as a result of what I learned from writing this one, and also directly as a result of, touch wood, pretty much thinking that the next time I write a book, I'm going to be writing it on more stable ground, where there isn't going to be quite that much going on. It's not going to be quite as eventful as it was when I was writing this sucker. So that's going to be a change that I will be very delighted to experience, having just that more smooth sailing. Thank you very much. Jesus, Goddess, thank you. As if the ongoing saga of COVID-19 and all of the emotions that came with that wasn't enough to contend with, I then started to develop RSI from the typing schedule that I had. It was a bit of a difficult one because I had previously, at the beginning of writing Rebel Witch, made the decision that I was going to voice record it. I was going to use like a voice dictation device. However, whenever I tried to do that, I found myself overthinking what I was producing, and I didn't like the feeling of it. I found that typing is a bit of a slower process. And when I say a slower process, I still type at about 84 to 88 words per minute. So I have a very fast typing speed. But for me, it is a process that is slow enough and sort of gradual or changeable enough that I can think about what I'm saying before I actually say it. I can really process the writing as I'm doing it. Whereas with recording, I can't do that. In fact, usually when I use a voice dictation device, it's when I'm thinking about poetry pieces that I'm trying to fit together. And poetry flows out of me usually very quickly and very kind of... It's a very fiery process. Whereas I think with the writing of Rebel Witch, there was a lot more air there. And, you know, air is also, it gives me kind of like a swift elemental spirit. However, it's also lofty. There's room to move the pieces around. And I didn't feel like I had that with voice dictation. Maybe some of you can understand what I mean by that. But basically, I did end up typing the majority of Rebel Witch. There are definitely parts that I did voice dictate, but most of it was typed. And yeah, I started to experience RSI. Now, I'd had several friends that had gotten RSI in the past and explained to me what the feeling of it was like. And it certainly didn't sound nice, but I was not prepared in any way for the physical agony that RSI can actually produce. What? Oh my good goddamn and gravy. I mean, it wasn't very nice, chickens. It wasn't very nice. Blimey. Oh, I've got a physical memory of it. Oh, the body keeps the score. Nasty. Most of the time, I was pretty good at communicating with my editor about issues that I was having that were either slowing the writing process down or things that I was thinking of that I wanted to change slightly, or I wanted to kind of go through with her and sort of discuss the execution of certain things in the book. However, there was definitely a time during my period in Amsterdam, living in Amsterdam, where I felt like I had fatigue from this project. I felt like I couldn't really discuss it or think about it for a few weeks back there. And that was really difficult for me. That was, I think, the moment where I wondered if I had to put the project on pause. As I said, I'm really glad that I didn't do that. And I'm glad that we managed to keep it to the schedule that we had devised. And you know, that feels good. It feels good that it's here in my hands right now. It feels good that it's coming out in April. You can pre-order it now. I'll leave all the details down below for how you can pre-order. So I am really pleased that it went this way. But certainly, you know, there was a moment of grinding completely to a halt for me. And I want to let you know that if that's you right now, if you're in the middle of something and it feels mammoth and it feels overwhelming and you're really questioning your ability to be able to take it to the finish line, if you've ground to a halt, that doesn't mean it's the end. Sometimes it just means that you really do need a very, very deep and unequivocal breather, and then you can get back on the horse. And don't pressure yourself about when you're going to get back onto the horse. Just know that in that moment, you need that breather, and you've ground to a halt in a way that is almost your body and your mind telling you that that is what you need to do. There were moments writing this book where I was walking on air and it was absolute and utter heaven, as Neil Gaiman once said about the best and most joyous parts of the writing process. And as Neil Gaiman also said, there were some bits that I wrote because they were the next bit that had to be written. And that doesn't mean that I didn't have any passion, any joy while I was writing those parts. But a book is put together through visualizing what the chapters need to be, deciding what all the parts are that you need to put in. And you might not necessarily be passionate about the part you're writing as you are writing it. And that's actually okay. In fact, Neil Gaiman, I'm quoting a lot from this part of the Nerdist podcast with Neil Gaiman. I'll leave it down below. It's amazing advice for writers. Neil Gaiman said that if you don't write much, if you don't write when you're not inspired, you're not going to make a good novelist. You might make a very good poet, but you're not going to be able to write, things like this that are all about one subject. Not that this is a novel. But his point was that you got to make your word count every day, whether you're inspired or not. So if you can only write when you're inspired, maybe poetry is for you. But if you want to write a hefty thing like this, that is all on that one subject, that tackles one thing or stays with a narrative. You have to make your word count, and you cannot afford the luxury of waiting to be inspired all the time. And I very much felt the truth of that as I was writing Rebel Witch. And it was a really, really good training exercise for me in self-discipline and in staying the course and sticking with the project. It was a really big self-development journey for me, and I couldn't recommend it more for people who feel like they want a new challenge and they want to show themselves what they can do, what they're capable of, what the fuck they are made of. It really does feel good to get to the end of it. And it feels good to just get to the end of sections of it and feel like, you know what, I wasn't really feeling writing that today. I didn't know how that was going to go, but I pushed myself through and I did the damn thing, and I look back over it and it's not half bad. That does feel very, very good. Especially for me at that time when so much weirdness was going on with my personal healing journey and also with the collective experience everybody was having. Rebel Witch was a bit of a touchstone of sanity for me at times, definitely. I'm very much a carrot person. I'm not a stick person. I respond a lot more to reward than I do to punishment. So for me, I had all of these rewards in front of me that I would give myself for writing certain sections of the book. And also I would think about the big reward at the end, which would be just my liberty to be able to pursue other things once the book was done. And also the biggest reward of all, which is to have it, to feel it in my hands, to look through it and to know this is something that I produced and I put my heart and soul into it. That is a very, very beautiful feeling. There is no doubt about it, darlings. So I was, thinking about that, and I was giving myself those injections of visualization and bringing something to manifestation through really holding it high in my imagination and knowing that is where this is going, honey. That is where this is going. That is what your finish line is going to look and feel like. And it was everything I imagined it would be and more. If you're trying to get through a big project and you feel like you're sort of stewing in your juices, you're running on the hamster wheel, I can't recommend enough the value of a short, sharp walk. All right, just take a walk round the block, do a lap, definitely. I also can't recommend the value of small sort of jolts of physical exertion. Just getting up to sweatiness before I sat back down again was really good. I definitely turned my phone off, no question. Turning my phone off was a very big part of how this came to completion. So I really want to say that for the record. That was very important to do. The phone was for me one of the biggest distractions, and turning it off was also a reminder to myself that I didn't want to end up doing things on my desktop that I was doing on my phone, or on my laptop that I was doing on my phone. So I'd reach for my phone as a kind of impulse because we're attached to our phones a lot of the time. I'd realise it was off. I'd remember why I turned it off, because I'm trying to write. And then any temptation that I had to go and do something on my laptop that was not to do with writing this, I would check myself, because I would think, look, you've turned your phone off. You've agreed with yourself that you're going to have your phone off for the next half an hour or the next 40 minutes. So really focus on the writing. Don't just go to your desktop and do the same things you would have done on your phone, because you're screwing yourself over there. So I definitely gave myself permission to be a little bit tough with myself and be a little bit of a disciplinarian on myself. I think there's always room for a little bit of army boot camp sergeant, and I definitely think that's one of the ways that I got over the finish line. And one of the things I was thinking of too, and I think I just mentioned this a bit earlier, was thinking about how I could be free to pursue other projects and do other things. Towards the end of my deadlines for Rebel Witch, I definitely was very hyper aware of the fact that I didn't feel comfortable to work in my art journal, for example, or to work on poetry, because I knew that this was lingering and looming and needed to be done. And I wanted to honour the commitment I'd made to myself to do it. So, I was very much thinking, look, imagine the sumptuous feeling of opening your art journal up and just really decadently doing collages and working on sketches and working on line work. Once you get Rebel Witch done, then you can do that. Imagine the decadence of, having an hour-long chat with a friend on the phone that you feel guilty about having at the moment. If you just get this done, then you'll be able to have that. So it was very much little carrots, I was my own little donkey, and I was sort of like dragging myself along with carrots. If you're listening to me and you're thinking, I don't know yet what my big project would be. I don't know if I can reach completion on the project I have in mind. I'm not really sure what it would all look like and how it would fit together, or if I would have the energy, or if I would have the self-belief. Don't worry, because there are very many years back there in my life where I definitely know that I wouldn't have produced this. And sometimes it really is about just getting to the summit of the mountain and knowing that you have really worked to produce within yourself the sturdiness and the belief that you need to make something like this happen. And sometimes you don't feel like you're in readiness for it, even as you begin it. Even as you begin it or you're part way through it, you question that readiness. And that doesn't mean you're not supposed to be doing it. It means you're a fucking human being. It means you're a human being. That's it and that's all. So don't allow that to put you off from starting something and from knowing that you want sincerely to finish that thing. By the way, darlings, before I read a couple of excerpts from my book, Rebel Witch, Carve the Craft That's Yours Alone, I just want to say that the other big moment of joy for me in this whole process was seeing this cover, watching it being created and seeing it actually come to fruition. This was produced by a very, very talented illustrator and graphic designer called Jenny Lloyd. I'm going to leave her Instagram account down below. I'm getting goosebumps as I say that because you will freak out when you see the digital collage work that she produces. It is absolutely beaut. There's other things on the account too, but the digital collage work, I mean, I need this woman to produce a tarot deck, and so will you when you see this if you're into the same kind of art as me. It's incredible work. And yeah, she really just brought something to the book that I don't think I would have received any other way. I explained to her what I wanted the front cover to look like. I said that I wanted to have sort of hands holding a crystal ball, and I wanted just the top half of the bottom half of a face, sorry, with flowing hair. So I described to her what I wanted, and this is the finished result. And oh my good goddess, on a bike with a banana and Christ on the side. I mean, come on now. Isn't that just stunning? It's beautiful. And the design of it as well, that they've done the gorgeous inside with that amazing, I don't even know what you'd call that. I want to say it's turquoise, but yeah, it's turquoise. It's absolutely stunning. And there are internal illustrations as well, 3 of them, again, produced by Jenny Lloyd. Very, very gorgeous. So yeah, those moments were thrilling. Seeing what somebody who is closest to me and who has been following my journey and my vision for as long as she's known me, and knowing that we have that sort of that synergy in our creative vision, seeing that person take and interpret what I wanted and take it from something conceptual to something real that actually has adorned the book in such an appropriate, such a fitting, such a meaningful way. That was joyful. That was a part of the process that I would do again. Well, I didn't do it, she did it, but you know what I mean. You know, you can imagine how joyful that was. Honey bunnies, thank you so much for joining me for this video. And without further ado, I would like to round off by reading just a couple of passages from my book, Rebel Witch. I am going to be sharing more excerpts on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube before the launch in April, but I just want to give you a little taster now before I end things. So this particular part is from chapter 6 of part 1. It's called Making It Your Own. There is only one version of you in the whole of space and time. You are your own thing. Nothing before or after will ever be the exact same as you. Although you can empathise with many experiences and feelings that others have, only you have lived your exact life. Only you have access to what makes you a unique individual, and you will never be replicated. The personal knowledge that is only yours to use is among the most potent of your intellectual possessions. If your practice is cookie cutter, it's not going to work even half as well as if it's laden with pieces of yourself. The stuff you've personally taken to your heart will have far greater significance to you than anything someone else has recommended. So your Rebel Witch path will be invested with your essence. If you take anything from this book, let it be that. Bring in the things that mean the most to you, the colours, quotes, songs, clothes, genres, fictional characters, patterns, textures, foods, references, and associations. Bring in the time of day that you love most, the seasons you enjoy, the animals, films, locations, and concepts that resonate with you. Consider the historical events that have influenced you, the sounds and shapes and fears and fantasies that have defined you. Seriously, take an inventory of all the things that make you who you are and that inspire you to become who you envision being. Don't be afraid to figure out what makes you tick most of all and include it. In order to make your path as power-packed as it can be, you must permit yourself to put your unique stamp on it. This means mining your memory for the things you lived through which made you stronger, wiser, more joyful, or more aware. It means embracing who you are, what you love, and what really makes you shimmer. Try to do so without apology. Your path can include whatever makes your blood cells sing. You might see certain aesthetics and concepts being used by other witches and find that you don't vibe with them. Maybe you're not really a rustic woodland type. Maybe you're more about neon colours and modern imagery. You may want a simplified practice, uncluttered and straightforward. Or you may be a maximalist witch who combines 100 different things in kaleidoscopic harmony. Maybe you don't vibe with the idea of working with deities, celebrating moon phases, or playing with tarot cards, and you're not obliged to do any of those things just because they're popular. You decide what holds power for you, as you're the only one who will rely on your practice to make things happen in your life. Maybe you feel wary of jumping into the creation of a highly individualized practice filled with the random wonders inside your mind and all the things that make you who you are. You may tell yourself that whatever is pre-existing, tried and tested, and widely recognized is always going to hold more power, and that you ought to just learn it, follow it, and avoid going too far off the beaten track. But if you're reading this book, you're probably willing to shift your perspective. You're aware of the great power inside your very own story, the power that has always been available to you. You know that this power is inherent in you, and that it doesn't need to be tied to any external traditions in order to be valid. Of course, there's nothing wrong with following traditional customs and procedures in spirituality, and there are resources to help you learn them. But this book is intended to help you construct something of yourself, a witchcraft practice that looks and feels like you. Okay, honeybees, the next excerpt I want to provide for you is from chapter 21 of part 3, and it's called Troubleshooting. And this is all about dealing with the crunchy stuff, dealing with the problems that might arise in witchcraft. This part is about not believing in your powers or in magic. Choosing to embark on a witchy path implies that you're at least willing to try to believe in its validity and benefits. Perhaps you've been hearing and reading about how much it's helped others, and you've seen people who seem to be thriving through embracing their witchhood. Try to hold on to those observations when your sense of belief feels a bit flimsy. Sometimes everyday consensus reality can be so cold, hard, grey and dreary that it's easy to feel as if magic is a faraway concept that doesn't have much to do with your life. We all feel this way sometimes. It doesn't mean you're a bad witch. Keep coming back to the reasons why you're walking the witchy path, and remind yourself that if it's helped other people, it can help you too. The more you do witchcraft yourself, the more you'll be offered proof that it works. And if your witchcraft works, then it's real. If you're having a particularly dull day and you don't feel at all witchy, try switching on your magician's mindset. This means increasing your awareness of the wonder and meaning that's all around you by finding the magic in everything. I often switch on my magician's mindset while on a walk. For 10 or 20 minutes, I see everything that I encounter through my 5 senses as a symbolic morsel for me to digest and use. A bird in the sky is immediately translated into a sign from my goddess. The colour of clothing worn by a passerby suddenly has a rich meaning just for me. The lyrics from a song pumping out of a car window offer a message of clear guidance to help me solve a problem. When I take on magician's mindset, I'm ripping a hole in the fabric of mundanity and allowing it to fill with spiritual potency. Over time, you'll find that you can slip into magician's mindset naturally without having to think about it much, and this will increase your belief in the witchy stuff all around and within you. Finally, remember that witches have many different beliefs about what is happening when they cast a spell, or even what magic really is. Some witches believe it's all in the mind and that magic is a self-transformational psychological tool. Other witches believe that non-physical beings help them to cast powerful spells. Lots of witches believe that magic is about drawing on their own divine power and that they are the gods of their own lives. Spend some time considering what you think it's all about. You can have your own unique philosophy of witchcraft and how it works in your life. Darlings, thank you so much for sticking around for a couple of slim excerpts from the book, Rebel Witch, Carve the Craft That's Yours Alone. I'm definitely going to be doing a few more readings from the book across my various platforms before it is due to launch in April, but you can pre-order the book now. As I said earlier, I'll leave the details down below. Thank you so much for sharing with me in this journey and wanting to know more about the creation process. And this video was much more about the crunchy than it was about the smooth. And yeah, so much love, and I'll speak to you next time. Blessed be, honey bunnies. Mwah.